Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Hands on SAP Dev with Q Macro. That's me, DJ, and I'm joined again by my friend and colleague and special guest for this episode, Mr. Witalij Rudnicki. Hello.
Hi, DJ. Hi, everyone. And the way you said I'm joined again, I felt like, is it the moment I should be apologetic? No, no. It's sorry. Just
every time you join, it's a wonderful thing. It's a bonus. It's a bonus episode. It's a bonus episode anyway because we're sort of broadcasting on a Wednesday afternoon. And for those of you watching and wondering, of course, Hands on SAP Dev runs every Friday morning UK time, but every other Wednesday now I'm trying to do an extra episode in the afternoon to catch the US time zones and do something special each time, e.g. with I'm going to point to Witalij. Wait a minute. E.g. with Witalij. There we go. Over there. Perfect. By the way.
No. Yeah, it's confusing.
It is confusing, but at least we have the same shirt on, so that sort of forgives us a little bit, right?
Yes, and I hope that people will not kind of like mix us, just because we are wearing the same SAP Developer Advocate shirt. I'm the one with glasses today.
I thought when you were pointing to your head, I thought you were going to say, I'm the one with hair, but you're the one with glasses. That's very, very diplomatic. Thank you, Witalij. And hello there, Chesh. Welcome, and thank you for joining. Right, well, so just to set the scene, we had you on last in episode 68, right, with your data engineer hat on. And you were talking about data pipelines and HANA and HDI containers. You're going to put your hat on. There we go. Awesome. Oh, what's the logo on the hat? Remind us.
So this is SAP HANA on cap.
Nice. We see what you did there. That's very, very good. Hey, Michal. Michal, is it Michal? Welcome. I'm looking over here because this is my YouTube monitor, but this is the main screen here. So perfect. So last time you were talking about how cap meets hat, literally and metaphorically. And today you're going to dig deeper, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that whole thing that we've seen and what we're going to see today?
Right. So this whole series started even before that when I joined Maxi. And on this Maxi stream, I was looking into some qualities of HANA, like what makes it in memory and what makes it column-oriented. Mm-hmm. And then we were looking what HDI container is on HANA database. And then when I joined you, we started looking, and with Maxi as well, we looked at Jupyter as the very popular tool that both data engineers and data scientists are using, that gives them familiar environment to program not only in SQL, but as well in Python or in R or in some other programming languages. Yeah. And then when I joined you, we started looking now that once we are building this enterprise data landscape, there are actually quite many, I would say, ingredients, quite many systems that are being involved into this, right? Mm-hmm. And this is where I somewhat introduced data intelligence with the way it can show you your landscape and systems that matters for you once you are working on particular solution. And the data intelligence that we are using is the one that is available in Cloud Analytics library. I don't know, my screen is not yet visible, right?
I can switch straight away to your screen. Let's do that, shall we?
Yes, please.
Okay, just updating the stream now, and we're there. Go for it.
Perfect. Thank you, TJ. So I have this SAP Data Intelligence trial running on SAP Cloud Appliance Library. Mm-hmm. And as we mentioned the previous time, it is kind of like an additional layer that allows you to bring your own account. And by account, we mean some hyperscaler account, be this AWS or Google Cloud Platform or Azure or Ali Cloud. And it allows you with just a few simple clicks to deploy particular solution. Right. So in our case, as I mentioned, we are running data intelligence trial, and I have this chance just to connect to it. right?
Nice.
And last time we created the tenant, and I hope that I remembered it properly, right? So the tenant is stream, and my user is Witalij. And then we went into this connection management, and this is what allows us to see our enterprise data landscape, which actually in this case is right now only one schema. Sorry, for whatever reason, I removed this data that we added there. We can add this back with just a few clicks, but for the moment we need just this one, right?
Yeah, that's all good.
And this schema that we are looking on here right now is something that we created in my SCP trial account, right? So there is this dev space, and in this dev space, I showed how you can create just HANA schema in addition to this HDI shared container, right? And then pretty much where we finished is that I went to something that is called modeler here, and this is where I didn't build this so-called data pipeline step by step because it would take some time. So I just imported it, and it is called. It was just my trackpad. Who would think that from the distance of just 30 centimeters, Bluetooth can be not that reliable? So we kind of like ended up with this data pipeline, and what we were doing here is that connecting to some GitHub repo that has CSV file with the rating of 10,000 good books.
That's right, yeah.
And actually, I need to run this once again because in the meantime, for particular reason that I will come back to, I deleted this table because I wanted kind of like to start where we stopped last
Totally
time.
Understand. No, totally. I mean, that seems to be a common thing where, when you're doing live demos and stuff, how much do you go back to delete stuff to start again? I have that problem all the time. So no, it's completely normal. And by the way, hi to Tim, hi Olivier, Greg, Rahul, Sunil, welcome, everybody, welcome. It's great to have you. We got Witalij on today.
Hi guys. So the flow in this case is obviously very simple, right? So we are grabbing the CSV file from GitHub repo. I showed this last time. We need to do a little bit of manipulation because for no values it used dash, and obviously this is something that we will not be able to enter in numeric field in HANA. And then we load this table into HANA, and then this graph terminates. So let me start it. Once again, it shouldn't take too long. And just as last time, I mentioned that we are looking a little bit behind the scene, right? Because it is not just pure marketing, look what you can do with our software. It is as well, look how it works, understand this, so that when you hopefully face it, you have the complete picture.
Absolutely.
Right?
This is what we're all about on this channel, right? And welcome, Helmut. You're not too late, so we're very welcome to you.
Not late at all. We just completed our first data pipeline. And the reason why there is this operator that is called graph terminator is that by default, these graphs are running continuously. And we will get back to this later on as well. So once this graph is executed, what we should see now here in this schema, right? So I configured in my web IDE the connection to the schema. I showed all of this in this previous episode, how to do this. So obviously, if anyone needs to catch up, they can just rewatch this previous episode. So we've got this table, right? And the reason why I wanted to run this is that I just wanted to show two more qualities of HANA that is extremely important to understand what makes it good for this high performance data processing workloads.
Right.
So one thing is that we looked last time with Maxi that every column is managed separately, and therefore every column can be loaded or unloaded from main memory of the database. And this is one of the ways to manage the memory footprint in memory database. What I wanted to focus on right now is on the size of this table that we see right now. So right now it is 30 megabytes, about 30 megabytes. And it is actually something that I mentioned in this previous streaming with Maxi, is that underneath this table has two parts. One is the main size and the other one is this delta size. And this time, what I wanted to show you is that in this in this initial statement for table loading, I included something that normally you wouldn't do, but again, just for learning, I did this here, that we altered this table and we included disable auto merge. Merge means the process where HANA compress this data from this delta part into the main part of the table, right? Again, from your perspective as a developer, this is one single table, completely transparent for you. But again, to understand how things work, I really wanted to get back to this, right? So right now, this table is 30 gigabytes. 30 megabytes,
suddenly.
right? Would be a little bit too much. Oops. And now I want to do manually something that would happen automatically is merge delta of this table.
Okay.
So let us execute this. It shouldn't take long. And now if we go back to, so for the moment we see that this main part, which is read optimized, column oriented, compressed, is like only 4 bytes. And if I refresh, now it should show us that this main part is 13 megabytes and the delta size is pretty much empty, right? And now the total size of our database is 13 megabytes, right? So this is how this columnar nature of SAP HANA allows us to reduce the footprint of the data once we use this approach with columnar compression, right? And we can see that pretty much every single column now will have reduced footprint as well. And that this ratio will greatly depend, obviously, on the nature of data, on the values you have there, and so on and so forth. So this was kind of like the third quality, either the besides in-memory database, columnar nature, the compression is the third. And the fourth one that I would like to show is, let's say, we now want to run the query, which would calculate the average
of the ratings.
Rating for every book. Okay, so it takes us about 20 milliseconds, right? And can we kind of like further improve this time? Okay. It is only 500,000 records, so it is not really something that kind of like will be outstanding improvement. But still, just to kind of like show this quality, I still would like to do it. So what I would like to do is to just to as well include alter table. No, not the record, but
while you're typing that in, got a question from Greg. Gregory. Not sure if this was already shown, but will we see the quickest way to create a database app in the trial account? We're not going to cover that today, although on HandsOnSAPDev we've covered that in some detail. I guess it depends on what sort of database app you're looking to create, of course. It's quite a generic term. But in fact, as Helmut, I think I've just seen now, as Helmut has just replied, CAP is a great way of creating a database app, whether that's with a Java-based implementation or a Node.js-based implementation. But in terms of the database itself, you can really easily create the schema via an HDI container on HANA in the trial account and cloud platform using CAP. I mean, there's maybe I should put some more playlists together that are sort of task orientated. That might be a good idea. But yeah, check out the rest of the episodes in this series, Greg, and look for the ones relating to CAP.
Okay. In the meantime, I finished typing my statement. So basically what I've done here is that I'm telling now split this table into partitions, right? And once it is split, now we should see that obviously not the first time, but subsequent executions now reduce this by 2, right? And even though partitions is not something, let's say, HANA special, right? It's been in databases already for a while, and it was primarily the DBA task. The reason why I'm mentioning this, in this call where we are talking about developers, is basically this is the fourth quality of SAP HANA, which is parallelization, right?
Right.
So we all know that, like, pretty much the speed of or clock rate for CPUs flattened around 2005.
Yeah, a while ago anyway, yeah.
Right, and since then, it is not that much the task of the hardware to accelerate, but it is that much the task of developers now to use this distributed processing and to write this processing in the way that is using the fact that now we have multi-core CPUs and that we not abuse, but that we use them properly to make our application fast.
Yep.
And this is where, on one hand, I'm mentioning that yes, it is something that is extremely important in HANA architecture. This multi-core approach and distributed processing. On the other hand, it was funny for me when I was checking documentation. I still found that these partitions are described in administration guide, not that much in developer guide, because this is still if you would be wearing the hat of this DBA, who does things post factum. But right now, because we are living in this world of big data, it is very often the requirement already for developer of these data-intensive applications to know kind of like your data and to understand that because of the big volumes we are talking about, you need to be thinking about this data model already upfront, not leaving this to DBAs. And this is very similarly to kind of like the world of DevOps. There is this whole discipline of data ops happening right now, right? So data ops is that where you are not thinking about these data structures to operations guys like DBAs, but this is something that you as developers should be considering as well once you are designing and developing your application.
It's funny that you mentioned DevOps because I was thinking of that as a parallel to what you were saying, i.e. the distinction between a DBA and a developer is a lot more blurred today than it was 10 years ago. Right.
And this is what is happening, on the scene for pretty much every aspect, right? There is not only DevOps, there is SecOps right now, right? For security guys, there is data ops for data developers, there is AI ops or ML ops for machine learning, data science guys, right? So this overlap between building your solution and operating your solution is increasing, right? So once again, I just wanted to show, these qualities, or maybe remind to some people like Greg, because one of his comments to the previous video was just like, oh, you remember me, some of the courses that I was doing 10 years ago when HANA was first introduced. But I hope that now, 10 years ago, it's worth to refresh the memory.
In fact, Greg, you say you add a little bit to your question in feature set B. Now, just to round that out, I may be mistaken, but as far as creating a DB app in the trial account, whether it's feature set A, feature set B, or feature set X, which doesn't exist, it's the same. A feature set B is more about what administrative bits and pieces are available on the cloud platform and the cockpit itself, rather than anything relating to the services.
Okay, so now let us have a look quickly at this bookshop HDI data to build the next step, what I wanted to show, right? So there is a whole bunch of tables that were created, and one of these tables was this SAP common currencies, right? It's just that these common currencies were not populated during my deployment. Maybe I did something wrong. But this is as well something that I mentioned in our previous discussion, is that normally you wouldn't use the CSV uploads, obviously, for your complete application, right? It is great thing to upload some data once you are developing and testing, but then obviously in production environment now you need to think how these tables are maintained, and maybe you want to build the UI and to type all these currencies every day, usual way as you would do this like 20 years ago, or maybe you build data pipeline that will populate this for you. Unfortunately, because I had extremely busy these 2 weeks, and frankly speaking, today it is my second webinar and I still have the third one still happening today. I didn't manage to populate exactly this table, but I still wanted to show another example, maybe it's another pipeline, grabbing some data. So in this case, it will look very similar. I found not GitHub repo in this case, but some website, Data Hub IO. Nothing in common with SAP Data Hub. This name is just simply popular, as it seems. So there is some Data Hub IO, and these guys are providing the CSV file with currency codes.
Nice.
Right? And in this case, I just want to make sure that I'm loading this into the proper. So yeah, I'm loading this into the same schema that I created for our good books. And then funny thing here as well, I needed to do some data manipulation, just because this guy, completely independently from these good books, decided that if there is a missing value, that you need to include this dash as no value, right? So this is what makes our data developer guys funny, and we will get back to this as well, right? So let me just execute this graph. So again, we should see that behind this, Kubernetes pod is created. Now it is completed because it is not that much of the data. And once again, I don't want to scare anyone by showing this, Kubernetes and pods and so on. Yeah, it's not to show how smart we are here in developer relations, that we know how to run it. It's really just to show what is happening behind the scene, and maybe even to get someone interested to dig as well themselves.
Definitely.
But now that it is executed, I should go back to my tables in Goodbook schema, and here I have my currency import. With now it is just the list of currencies.
Yes.
Right? And this is what, frankly speaking, I love pretty much from day one of me working with data. It is so exciting field to learn so much about the world. Yeah?
Exactly. I mean, I didn't realize that Antarctica has no universal currency.
Me neither. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So entity Antarctica has no universal currency, therefore there is no alphabetic code for this, there is no numeric code for this, but for whatever reason, someone decided to include this
It
into...
tells you all you need to know learning about data. Just expect the unexpected. So have a null value for numeric code for a currency. That's sort of there it is right in front of our eyes.
But this is as well going kind of like back to this functionality that I was showing last time in data intelligence. Once we start building our view into our enterprise data landscape, assuming that this data set is coming from our enterprise data landscape, now next thing we would start building here is data profiling, right? So we want to understand what data is available there, and then depending if this, for example, this sample Antarctica should be there or not, we should start building the rules for the quality of our data, right? So one of the rules of this quality should be, for example, no empty field for the currency rate, right?
Sounds fair.
And then every time we are kind of like refreshing this data, we make these rules executed automatically, and then we would see this dashboard which showing us, there is a data quality issue with this source, right? Someone didn't think about this. Someone just copy-paste data from somewhere and introduced some data quality issue into our landscape.
Yep.
The other thing that why I'm mentioning that it is so exciting, to have a look at this data is there is the withdrawal date column, right? So it means that it is empty here, but if we scroll down, then at some point of time, we will see, oops, okay, we have some currencies with withdrawal date, right? So from here, we can learn that, for example, in Azerbaijan,
the history of the currency,
there was Russian ruble used till like 1994, right? So 3 years into independency, Russian ruble was still a currency there. And then there was another currency, Azerbaijan manat, and then obviously they have some new currency right now that is kind of like still relevant, yeah? So, and usually it means for new. I know it because in Poland we have PLN as well, which means new Polish currency, right? And this is what, again, I hope that I'm not wasting anyone's time, but this is what I love about working with data, because you're learning about the world.
Totally.
So much, right? And now it means that once we understand our data, maybe we wouldn't expect that, that there are some books in your bookshop that are in Azerbaijan manat, but at least for all the other currencies that we use, we can use this table now to grab some data and use it there. But the other reason why kind of like I pulled this data set is that, as you can see, even though maybe not too frequently, but this data can refresh, right? So once in a while, country is refreshing their currency. And that's why I wanted to go back to this data pipeline. I mentioned that we introduced this graph terminator to execute it only once, but now if I remove it and I execute, and just to maybe make it visible, now I need to say that I would be pulling this every, 10 seconds. Again, totally makes no sense for this particular data set, but let's say we are using this as an example, right? And we want to execute it. Now, here we are using this data intelligence 3.0, and we need to use some kind of workaround when we as developers want to see what is happening, right? So there is an operator that is called wiretap. And once I go into this wiretap, I should see the data that is coming from the source, right? So every 10 seconds, it will be kind of like refreshed.
Nice.
And then actually, I have a wiretap as well after this HANA, which is returning just if there is any error message, when executing.
So these wiretaps are literally you attaching a wire effectively to the two various points in the chain, in the graph, in the chain.
Yes, which reminds me a joke. Again, hopefully not wasting anyone's time, but I remember once when I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the US, and I was just in regular grocery store buying something, and the guy who was selling me this stuff, he said, just like, "Oh, you speak with Ukrainian accent." I said, "Wow, how do you know? Have you ever been to Ukraine?" And he said, "No, never been to Ukraine." And then I'm just like, if he never been to Ukraine and he can recognize Ukrainian accent, probably he was one of the CIA guys, sitting on this wiretap,
yes,
and listening to me talking. So every time I see this wiretap operator, somehow,
brilliant.
I remember about this. But as I mentioned, here we are using this trial edition of Data Intelligence 3.0, and there is one improvement that is available in later version that I just really wanted to show quickly how the developer experience is improving. But for that, I actually need to connect to the later version of data intelligence.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I'm logged in there, and let me just go to, sorry.
That's all right. Well, Greg's saying so. Wiretaps are like streaming monitors. Yeah, I guess that's one way of looking at them, right? Yeah.
But kind of like as convenient as it was, to use these wiretaps, quite often developers found that they add unnecessary, complexity. Let's put it this way, to that, and especially once you are now moving this data pipeline to production, obviously you don't want to have this wiretap. You want to have better way to do this whole data debugging. Therefore, let me just load the same. So right now, let me just quickly show you. I am not in the on-premise data intelligence, but I am using the cloud version. So this is version 2003. And here we have a new option that is called debug, right?
We like that word. We like that word.
Yes. So as a developers, we should kind of like really like it. It's just that here I have slightly different HANA that I have connected, but just really wanted to show how kind of like developer experience is improving constantly.
Max has just joined and said, "Well, am I allowed to join this stream if he's not wearing his blue developer advocate long sleeve?" I think the other folks in the other guests or the other participants in the live stream should answer that. Should Max be allowed to stay, or should we throw him out? Let us know in the chat whether Max.
And Max, just remind me now, you are not on video. DJ is, I am is, but it is not your turn to be on video.
Yes, that as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Let us know in the chat whether Max should be allowed to stay.
Yeah. So now if I run this in debug mode, we should see, and let me just switch to the preview. Yep. So now we have, after each of these operators, we have so-called breakpoints. Obviously, they are not kind of like execution breakpoints, but they are data debugging breakpoints, right? So now, for example, I can just, couldn't click right there where I needed.
Those are little glasses, so sunglasses or something.
Yeah. So now I see exactly the same information that I've seen before, right? And just really wanted, I know that I'm going into the version that is not yet publicly available as a trial or developer edition, but just really wanted to show that it is improving in my opinion, and as well, I hope in many other developers' opinion. It is really something that we've been asking for a while. Sorry?
No, I was just laughing. Helmut said, as Witalij said, Max is not on video, so he can stay.
Okay. And something that I just wanted to show, something that I showed you, DJ, after our previous.
Yes.
This is exactly the way we are using our data intelligence in our for what we are trying to achieve, right? So we started Kubernetes cluster with 32 gigabytes nodes just to be able to load a couple of thousands of lines. But on the other hand, I think that it really requires mastery, to be able to do with machinery like this something as fine as we are doing. So we are excused.
Yes, we are excused.
Okay. And then the other thing, when I was talking about these currencies and about the learning the world, one thing I found while looking in general on currencies is that actually England was the very first country that introduced state currency in 928.
Whoa.
928, yeah. The king. And now I will not be able to pronounce it unless you know the name of the king, of the very first king of England. Aslan? Aselstan? Sorry, I cannot pronounce it, but he is actually the dude who said there should be one currency across the whole nation. So it was the very first national currency in the world that that everyone should not just use but should accept. This is what he said.
Nice.
In there. And by the way, £1 was equal to 15 cows from what I learned at this time. So while we are on currency exchange, the next thing, obviously, now that we loaded that we loaded currency descriptions for our bookshop, because I saw that different books are in different currencies, we would need to have these currency exchange rates, right?
Yep.
And this is where, for example, European Central Bank provides the free API, right? And you can use this API to get all these currencies.
Nice.
Right? Although in this case, for the moment, let me open this in Postman and create a request.
Typing into the chat the first king of England, Athelstan. Yes.
How do you pronounce it?
Well, I would pronounce it Athelstan.
Athelstan. Okay. So here we have. From here, I can read that it is the base currency is euro, and then it is valid for the previous date. And then there are all these different exchange rates, right? So now I can get that these rates are daily, right? But it is in JSON format, right? But we don't have any history, right? So if I would like to have the history, what do they offer here? So this is their daily rate, and then this is a time series, right? So time series is available in XML or as a CSV file that is zipped. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is that I'm not going to build now the pipeline, one that is reading zipped CSV file and the other one that is reading, JSON file. But this is where just I wanted to show how the world of these data guys have changed.
Sure.
During this last years, right? So on one hand, once we are talking about the sources, it is not on the applications or databases anymore. More and more often, we have this so-called, I don't know what the proper even pictogram for this would be, the so-called cloud storages or object storages, right? Like, for example, S3 or Swift or Google Cloud.
You draw a picture of a bucket or something.
Or
a cloud.
Or a cloud, right? So now we have all these different sources, and now we have all these different formats, right? So not only our traditional tables, but as I mentioned, these files are more and more popular, but now in some cases they can be JSON. In other case, they can be
CSV.
CSV.
YAML.
But CSV, kind of like it is having this renaissance time right now in this data developers world, because this is like universal format, but it is extremely inefficient format. Right?
It's a universal format, except when people use semicolons instead of commas, for example.
And the funny thing, I don't know if you've ever tried to check it. I didn't find there is no standardization of CSV format, right?
Correct.
So everyone is using it, but there is no like single body that would define how you escape this, or exactly do you use commas or semicolons.
Where I bring up, roll on my favorite quote of all time from Andrew Tannenbaum, the creator of Minix, which was the predecessor, or where it inspired a lot of Linux came from. Anyway, he said, the nice thing about standards is that there are so many to choose from.
And those usually that are being adapted are not coming from any standardization body. Except it is the Astalan, the king of England, right?
Yes.
As a standardization.
By default, the standardization body, I guess.
Right. So as I mentioned, for example, the CSV file is not that great once we are talking about, storing data. So there is ORC format. I don't know if you've ever heard about this. There is the
relational something or other. No.
There is the Parquet format for storing data. There is an Avro format for storing data, right? And for us in data development world, this is right now something that is more often used than CSV, because, for example, this Parquet format is already column oriented, and it is already compressed just to store exactly the same data as CSV file.
Mm-hmm.
So if we would go, for example, back into let me just to show it, right?
No, it's cool. While you're looking for it, I've been reprimanded by Max for allowing you to use Postman instead of curl. I didn't know you were going to use Postman, but next time, curl only.
Okay.
We are a terminal is a futurist terminal channel here.
Okay. Sorry, I somehow missed, this limitation.
Limitation? Curl? Never.
So what I just wanted to show you quickly, but oh gosh, I missed it somewhere here. That basically once you go to for example, the settings.
Mm-hmm.
It is somewhere there. Sorry, I should prepare it better. You can see that, for example, right now we support not only CSV files, but as well we support ORC and Parquet formats as well, because this is the way data is being exchanged once we are talking about large scale data. And then the third, which I found funny, but it is very often something that we need to live with as well, is that people are zipping files, So not only I need to read the file in all these different formats, but then, they are either zip, or they are gzipped, or they are tar and zipped, and then you can still find something on internet, surprisingly, that is RAR'd.
Yeah, that's a blast from the past.
And then 7Z and so on, right? So this is this hell where sometimes you, this data guy, need to live in, right? And this is where I found a very good initiative that is called schema.org. And this is like public domain. This is where many different parties are working together to unify, the way we define entities, so that all our distributed applications can exchange this information, right? So, for example, if we go to currency, right? So there is, for example, this currency definition, although, okay, in this case, it is a property. I was looking for the entity.
Yeah, the entity itself. Yeah, I remember schema.org. I used to play around a lot with RDF 10, 15 years ago. And I see I see that sort of converged, or, this RDF is part of where schema.org came from.
And I found that this is something that is really great if this would become kind of like, adopted standard.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I found quite problematic that, in the past, I need to look into what these guys did in the application. And they just like, oh, okay, what should be field for country? What should be the field for the city name? Yeah, like 50 sounds okay. Yeah, and then they created 50, and then you go the longest.
It's in Wales, isn't it, or a town name?
Yes, there is this town name, as far as I remember, somewhere in Germany or somewhere town.
Well, there's like down the halfway.
Like has all this long name, right? And then for example, for email address, instead of going into the definition of the email where it exactly specifies how long it can be, just like, oh, okay, let's give it 120 characters, right? So this is where I really hope that initiatives like this schema.org, that it would be mutual benefit for those who are writing data and for those who are reading data, and trying to process it somewhere further. Okay, and then one more thing that now going back to our data intelligence, as I mentioned, when we had this streaming with Maxi, we were talking about this notebooks approach, and I was showing that you can run this locally on your laptop, or we had this fun deploying it to SAP Cloud Platform trial, from Docker, and it was really fun. But obviously, it is such an important tool that, for example, in data intelligence, this is a tool that is already available as built-in. I should have opened this earlier. Okay, I'm opening it from the right place.
Actually, when we're talking or thinking about how long should the field for city be, or email, or whatever, I mean, I remember writing a blog post about sort of, what's the phrase, cattle not pets, so that the whole idea of cloud resources having unique identifiers, like the URL in the URL bar in your Omnibar in your browser now, AF2B4A, blah blah blah. Who would have thought 10 years ago that we'd have host names that look like that, as long as that?
Yes, and because one of the other topics I'm working on is HANA Advanced Analytics, and this is owing to the hell of all this multimodal that we are facing on, like working with geospatial data. And right now, for example, in our HANA, we have spatial reference system models for Earth. And I was talking for our developer manager, just like, we are getting to these missions to Mars. We should start thinking how we introduce Mars spatial reference system into HANA. And he said, yeah, take this as a home exercise and try to...
Interplanetary ontology. There you go. Maybe that's another T-shirt.
Right.
By the way, Greg is... I think Greg might be pulling your leg a little bit about your tabs. He's saying an opportunity to close some unneeded tabs. Although, knowing you, I would guess that none of those are unneeded.
So, frankly speaking, I do clean them once a week. And because I do this usually on Sunday, so on Monday it will be clean, believe me or not. But for the moment,
yeah, we're halfway through.
We are only halfway through, right? So I will need to add to this. And just, while it is loading, going back for a second to this Mars. So my discussion with this developer manager was, we did not foresee yet, one additional column in HANA for planet, right? Or
Exactly.
sorry, we should not talk about planet, because maybe earlier we go to the moon, especially if you are watching this Space Force show on Netflix right now, right? This is one I'm watching. So as DJ you mentioned, right? We need to look into the future,
Exactly.
what table structures we need to create, right? Oh gosh, I clicked on the wrong button. I cannot believe it. But basically, maybe we will leave this to some other moment where we go once again into these notebooks, into this Jupyter in data intelligence, and we will have time to look on that and how it is connecting or enriching, the things that we can do with HANA.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things I've learned is not to try and squeeze things in towards the end of an episode and, have another episode instead. Why not?
And actually, this is pretty much all that I wanted to cover today. With this Jupyter notebook, I just wanted to tease for next episode, but didn't really plan to go there, and to leave as well some time this time around for if there are any questions, because I don't see the chat.
There has been some good chat, but mostly from Max has disappeared now. He needed to jump off. He just wanted to drop in some random messages to disturb us, which is very nice of him. Thank you, Max. But no, actually, Greg is pointing out or saying that SF, I guess that's Space Force, is one poor show. Interesting. I've not seen it myself, but funnily enough, Witalij and Max and I were talking about Space Force this morning.
It is uneven as a show, but there are some great moments that keep me watching next episode.
Okay, well, in fact, so you're basically trying to learn from them, right? So to keep the attendees, keep the viewers coming back for the next episode, we'll have to have you on again, either on my channel or Max's channel. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that I'm sure you have and want to show, so we can do it then. Okay. So before we finish off, then, are there any more questions? Max is still here, by the way. Are there any more questions? Let's see them in the chat. If so, otherwise we'll round it out. And I think I've got some free slots on Wednesday coming up for super guest appearances. So if you know anybody, Witalij, haha. No, Helmut says, thank you, Witalij. Great insight into data management for him as a developer. Exactly. I mean, this is super interesting to me as a subject in general, but specifically the sorts of things that you're showing. It's great to get a little taste of, the sorts of the sorts of depths that you can get to, and the things you can do, and the problems that you face. It's great. So Greg is also saying, yes, bring the next episode. Okay, well, it's on then.
And I would love to finish, as always, my live episodes with something special.
Let me put you back to the large video then. Let me just switch. There we go. Go for it.
But this time, unfortunately, I cannot do it, because in 2 hours I have another webinar for 150 people discussing what it means intelligent enterprise in context of SAP and the way we are using, AI, machine learning, and so on and so forth in our technologies and in our applications. So I need to stay sharp for that next episode. Therefore, again, just kind of a teaser.
There's a lot of teasers going on here, isn't there?
But I will enjoy this later today.
Was it Italian? Did I see?
No, it's all Polish. It's actually from Wrocław. It's Dr. Brew.
Dr. Brew sounds like my sort of beer.
And it is craft beer, barrel aged. with red current.
Nice.
So around 9 p.m., 8 p.m. my time today, it should be on Untapped and on Twitter. But before that, just water.
Witalij, thank you so much for sharing stuff with us again, and thank you everybody for joining. Let's call that a wrap, and thank you everybody. I'll see you on Friday, a regular episode of HandsOnSAPDev. We're going to continue our journey discovering how to consume remote services in CAP. So join us at the usual time, 8 a.m. UK, 9 Central. And thanks very much for joining, and goodbye.
Bye. Cheers.